Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to TCS Live. Now, um, just to start off on a short story, I got up this morning, I looked at my phone, and it showed me, how many hours of sleep I got, what has been my sleep pattern throughout the week. Next, my Google app tells me that there are 5 billion searches that are made every day. I opened Twitter, and Twitter tells me that in 2019, it showed me some data that 41.6 million messages were sent on WhatsApp. $900,000 was spent in a minute on online shopping. Then 300,000 people were scrolling through Instagram in a minute in 2019, so on and so forth. The numbers just kept going. So it doesn't matter where I look, doesn't matter what I see, but there are numbers everywhere. So as the old saying goes, data is the new oil. So today we hear from an amazing leader. He's considered the 100 most influential people in data by Data IQ. He has been named the global top 100 data visionaries by hottopic.ht. He is the global head of analytics and insights unit at TCS, Mr. Dinanath Kholkar. And besides leading the ANI unit at TCS, he's passionate about making a difference in the field of education and is currently driving digital literacy initiatives in Pune. So who better than him to talk to and interact with the young guns on data and digital transformation? So let's bring him live. Hi, Dina. Really nice to have you here with us today.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's exciting to be here on this call.
Thank you. Now, we'll jump in right into our conversation. So, talking about what you and your team do, which is enabling clients in their digital reimagination journey. And data has been at the center of a lot of these digital transformation. So if you can tell our audience how data has helped organizations rewire themselves in the new beginning in COVID or in post-COVID scenarios.
So it's very interesting when I heard you narrate out all the data points related to the things which are happening in the digital world. We seem to be having a very interesting paradox over there. We talk about huge amount of data, but very surprisingly, when it comes to data where it really matters, we don't seem to have data. So just to give you some examples, you probably know a lot of migrant workers went back to their hometowns. And the government just doesn't have the data about who is the migrant, where have they come from, where have they gone, and things like that. When you actually look at data related to COVID, the amount of struggle that the government has had to actually collect this type of data is been humongous. We might be all happy to see live, feeds which come in when you open an app and look at COVID and you say, okay, there are so many cases which have been reported in your respective city. But are you sure that the data is accurate? And secondly, is it pretty much current? Possibly not. It's probably taking them 2 or 3 days to actually put that data together. So there is a very interesting situation that we have. There is tremendous amount of data. Data is the new oil, absolutely perfectly fine. However, there are various challenges which are there, which I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to actually look into. Let me give you a view of what the customers that we have working with have been faced with. And these are very real life situation challenges which are being faced by customers. So, many of you have heard about, forecasting models. And when you look at forecasting models, they are largely dependent on past data. Now, given the current situation, a lot of the past data has become irrelevant because the situation which we call as a black swan event pretty much redefines everything, and a lot of the models have become irrelevant. And various organizations, be it banks or be it retailers who do a lot of forecasting, have had to create these models all over again. Very good examples, when we actually had the lockdown, only the food supplies were allowed. All the others were stopped. Even Amazon was prevented from doing deliveries to homes. how do you actually rewire that entire thing itself was a big challenge. And we've been working very closely with Amazon and quite a few other retailers and other customers. Take examples for example, look at everybody asking the question, hey, how will these businesses resurrect themselves? What type of impact that would be there in the next 3 months, next 6 months? So we work with one of the largest market researchers, and it's been one of our large customers. And we have actually been churning out various reports. And it requires a lot of data to be churned, different type of insights being generated and produced so that their consumers or their customers can actually use those insights. On the other hand, you look at announcements which are being made around the vaccines, right? And the different drug discovery related things. One of our customers actually is in the front runner for creating the vaccine, and they're working very closely with the Oxford University in launching their vaccine. And the platform that they're using to actually do the entire life cycle of their drug development is a platform that TCS has built, which has to the core is an AI solution. So all in all, in the current scenario, one of the things which I have personally seen is that there is a significant amount of demand or a surge, I would say, in the demand that is there on these skills. And I feel that it's important for us to see how AI and other technologies can actually play a very significant role in addressing some of these type of situations and the demand that we are seeing.
Thank you, Dina. Thanks for bringing in that perspective. Now, we know that you lead the Analytics and Insights unit at TCS, and we have a lot of students who've joined us. In fact, there are about 700 students who've joined us as of now. So for them, if you can give them some insights in terms of what kind of career opportunities are there for students today in the ANI space. And is it important to know a programming language?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question, and I interact with quite a few students through the work that I do. And especially in the area of data and analytics, it is very important to appreciate the fact that no matter what role you take up, no matter what opportunities you pursue, data will be a very integral part of it. And start from very basic and fundamental aspect of understanding and appreciating data. And when you look at data, one of the key elements of data is about what do you do with the data? How do you visualize it? How do you look at it? So there are various technologies, various things that are important for people to know. The programming aspect that you talked about, yeah, it is quite easy for people to pick up programming. It is good to actually understand how you can use programming languages like Python, and I'm sure many of you have tried around with Python, and it immaterial of whether you are a computer science graduate or a mechanical engineering or you are doing civil engineering. I would strongly recommend two areas. You definitely need to learn a programming language like a Python or an R, and you should have a good amount of understanding of statistics. These are two aspects, and especially engineering students, I think one of the biggest advantages you have is your foundation in mathematics is very good. And when you look at data, it is all about numbers and all about mathematics. So if your foundational aspects are very good, then you can build on top of it very easily. And I generally tell people that don't worry too much about technology. Technology varies and changes and evolves. You have to be very strong on fundamentals. You have to be very good at your learnability aspect, and you will be able to pick up things very easily. Let me give you some correlation between your disciplines and how you could look at. And computer science graduates would obviously would have studied AI, would have studied some of the things that I'm talking about as far as programming is concerned. But let's take an electrical engineer. I've been an electrical engineer. I follow a lot of things around electrical engineering. And let us look at how electrical engineering, and suppose you get into being an electrical engineer or serving a utilities company, the demand supply forecasting is a very important aspect in electrical engineering. You look at civil engineering and you look at usage of, if you look at drawings, you look at various aspects which are there when you do go into construction or you are constructing a bridge. So much amount of data which is there. So in every field that you would get into, you would absolutely see a value to this particular area. Another aspect I will give you is look at the supply chain aspect, and you may look at it only in the context of larger organizations. Big organizations, they have a supply chain of where do I source the raw material from, how do I manufacture it, how do I actually sell it to my customers. But there are a lot of small and medium businesses, and in fact, in India, almost 50% of the jobs that are there are in the small and medium businesses. And I'm sure some of the folks who are there on the call may also have aspiration to create startups and support some of these small and medium businesses. So all in all, I would say that the technologies which are there, there is a vast amount of technologies. It's very important for you to be aware of these technologies, have the understanding of strong foundation on mathematics and some amount of programming languages. And at the same time, I would strongly recommend you guys to take a look at how AI is playing a very crucial role. And this is one thing which we have adopted at scale on getting many of our people oriented on what is the power of AI, what all can we do. In fact, we were just having a discussion with my team. We are looking at hiring huge number of people, and the selection process is a very tedious process. And the first thing which I told them is, hey guys, what are you guys doing? And the first thing which is saying that for screening of CVs, we are going to use AI. For doing some amount of checks, we are going to do AI. So some of these things are becoming mainstream, and I feel that apart from just being a technologist and using technology, it is also good to understand what are the type of techniques and technologies which are available to use data and take decisions using techniques which are available.
That I'm sure our students would have found that extremely useful. In fact, you also answered one of the questions before the live event we were running, Ask Me Anything for our audience. And one of the question was, if I'm not from an engineering background, or if I'm from a field like, let's say, biomedical or not a computer science, how do I get into engineering or, the AI field? So I think you've answered that question. And of course,
let me just add one more point, since you bring about biomedical engineering. So I just want to elaborate further on that, and I'm sure many of you would have heard and seen a lot of things which are happening currently. Very interestingly, our head of our life sciences business, he says very proudly, saying that the engineers are the next doctors. And very rightly so, because and not to take it wrongly or derogatively for the doctors, they are doing a phenomenal job. But just imagine if you have to handle hundreds of patients, and with that type of intensity, with the wearing a PPE, protection and all of that stuff. Let's say you create an assistant for that particular doctor in form of an AI solution, which he or she can use on a mobile device or some of the devices which are there. Just look at the type of scale that person can actually handle. So we actually look at creating these type of enablers. I'll give you a couple of very interesting examples. The one which I gave earlier on the pharma company for whom we are working with. We actually run for them the entire process of the drug development. I'll give you an example, give a little bit more detail. So whenever you launch a particular product or a medicine, you need to put it through trials. So you actually have to test it out on different people. You have to see what type of results you are getting, how much time does it take for recovery and all of that stuff. And it's all about collecting huge amount of data. Now that data comes back into the setup that we run, and there are people who are doctors, pharmacists, people who understand medical terminologies and stuff like that, and they process that entire data, and then they create models and validate that with the models that are created. Now just think about it. Earlier days, we used to actually have teams of just these type of people who are doing this. When we brought in the AI solution, at that stage, before the AI solution came in, about 30% of those activities were automated. Once the AI solution came in, we automated almost 80 to 90% of their work. What does this mean? It is not that the people who are doing that work actually got replaced. We were able to create many parallel streams with these people so that we can run multiple clinical trials at the same time. So people with biomedical engineering specifically will understand some of these terminologies very well and be able to make a very big difference into how we will engineer the solutions for the future. The other aspect is also very important to keep in mind, that there is a whole lot of things related to AI which will get into the mainstream as regards ethics around AI. Is somebody being biased about certain things? Because you have to train that algorithm, you have to train that program. There are various other aspects which are coming into play. So it is not necessary that a biomedical engineering person have to only look at it from point of view of creating those algorithms and solutions, but also to look at how is it getting used, what are the type of things which would happen if it is in the wrong hands, or if somebody trains the algorithm in the wrong way. So I think these are other aspects which I strongly feel that a student should keep an eye on, and you should absolutely look at possibilities. We work with a few startups which are into this area, and in the current scenario, I have been exposed to quite a few startups. One of the startups, it's based here in Pune, and I've been interacting with them for the last few months. So they have been finding very interesting patterns of looking at detecting the COVID and the implications of the increase of the infections through X-rays. Now you think about it, there are thousands of patients who are going through X-rays. For a person to actually look at so many X-rays and then say, okay, here is a type of possible infection increase which is happening and things like that. Just think about the fatigue that the doctor would be going through, and just think that, okay, if there is an algorithm which can just pick up saying that, hey, look, doc, these cases are pretty much okay. They don't seem to be having any issues, and that AI solution that you have built becomes like an assistant to the doctor. The decision has to be with the doctor, but at the same time, if you can help taking away the fatigue from the doctor, you have cracked a big problem for the type of service that these doctors are providing to us. So I think there is a very strong relation to some of the things that are there which are being taught in biomedical engineering and various other aspects of engineering which are linked to the healthcare space. And specifically healthcare, you might have seen on 15th of August, Prime Minister launched a particular program which is the National Digital Health Program, and that I think will play a very significant role in transforming the way healthcare is driven in India. As compared to the investments and the spend that happens globally, India is very poor on healthcare spend, and I think this type of programs will play a very crucial role. And I'm sure that many of you will play a very critical role in helping in that space. And I would strongly recommend, you guys, those of you who like reading books, our chairman N. Chandra wrote a book on called Digital Nation, and a large part of that book covers healthcare as a stream. And I would strongly recommend you guys to look at it, because it talked about how AI can potentially play a very significant role in transforming the entire healthcare system in India. So I thought, Tanvi, this would be a good perspective, because given the current scenario, I think it will be an injustice not to talk about this field in detail.
So yes, thank you, Dina. I think you gave them, a 360-degree view of the entire situation, and you also highlighted some of the points or some of the areas which we are working on, which the governments at large are working on, and where there is immense potential. Now, one of the questions that we've also seen a lot asked multiple times has been that about internships. So, are there any internship opportunities in the ANI space?
Yeah, absolutely. As part of the entire setup that we have within TCS, we keep on publishing these projects. We have different types of projects, different areas across different industries and things like that. So there are absolutely opportunities where many of the folks who are getting selected through the campus recruitment process get opportunities to work on these engagements, and we keep on publishing those across all the different digital technologies, not just on data and analytics, but there is various things which are there which you can participate in through the campus commune platform itself. But there is a lot more things to do. In an internship means you need to get to do something in that particular area with some amount of guidance. So one of the things which I feel, and very importantly, that government, as part of the entire transformation that is happening on the national education policy, and I've been very closely involved in reviewing some of the content in that, also making recommendation to the AICT and the entire engineering curriculum. We actually created a curriculum which had a significant play of internships. So one is internships that you would do with large organizations like TCS and many of our peers in the industry. But as I said, and specifically in this particular area, the opportunity space is pretty much wide open as such. So don't necessarily limit your thinking only to some of the large organizations. Even some of the smaller organizations, and as I mentioned earlier, the small and medium sector is struggling a lot, and they need a lot of help on data science and related aspects. You can take up internships with them. You can actually work on solving their problems. They just don't even have a very good mechanism of even having data collated and made available for themselves. So these are type of opportunities which I would see. The other area which I feel very strongly about is that you need to look at data in the context of social transformation. There is a lot of data which is being used for various aspects. So let me give you and many of you probably are from cities. So I'll first take people who are residing in the cities. Every city in India is now enrolled as part of the Smart City Mission. So the Smart City Mission Director happens to be the former PMC Commissioner and a good friend of mine. And he has been running this program for about 110 cities. And for all the cities which have been enrolled onto this, they have a Chief Data Officer. And the Chief Data Officer has access to a whole lot of data, and they have a very clear mandate to make the data from the city available on certain portals. Now, the reason they put it up on the portal is for startups and various other organizations to benefit from that data so that they can use for their benefit for their businesses, or to come up with new products, new ideas, new services and things like that. So let me give you an example around this. So I've been very closely associated with the city data officer of the Pune city. And she's been actually looking at some very interesting areas, be it education, or be it pollution, for example, or healthcare as such. And they have a lot of data which is available. However, nobody's really looking at that data or looking at working on that. So we've been actually organizing hackathons with the students. And we tell them, the guidance that is provided through the city data officer and her team is, this is the type of data, here is the type of things that how we collect it and things like that. And then tell them that, look, this could be useful for us to look at, and here are the type of things which could be useful. And I was very closely associated with the pollution related data. And, I'm just giving you a live example. So what is pollution in the context of city is that you have carbon emissions which are happening through vehicles, right? And if you don't have trees over there, that carbon dioxide just remains over there, and you don't get an enough supply of oxygen. So we actually told the students, why don't you actually look at the green cover data which is there? So they have trees data available. So data of trees, and you'll be surprised, they're just like you do census of human beings or the citizens. There is a census of trees which is being done, and that data is available with the municipal commissioner's office, and it is available through another department. So we actually got the kids to actually look at the data which was related to the trees, and we found a clear pattern between the census done in the last census, the previous census, and the census before that, a clear pattern about tree cover depletion in specific areas. And we could then correlate that to traffic and correlate that to healthcare related problems. So wherever there are people who are living in areas which have a depleting tree cover, and it is probably one of the most densely populated and most heavy on traffic, then you could potentially have breathing related issues and stuff like that. So I'm just giving you these possibilities that these data sets are pretty much available, and we didn't have to provide anything to the students. They pretty much did a lot of the things on their laptops, and many of them have access to their own personal laptops, or they have access to some of these things in their colleges, and they could pretty much do it. Again, the question which comes up is, hey, I am actually not necessarily well versed in this particular thing because I'm not from a computer science background. Doesn't necessarily matter, because you can form a team which is multidisciplinary. And to give that real life example, we have actually created, and this is more related to the folks who would be from the rural area. So we actually created an initiative for affordable agriculture. So look at agriculture as a field, and then look at data science and how data can potentially be used around that. So there is a lot of data which is being collected. So data could be related to weather patterns, data could be related to the soil, data could be related to water which is available, data could be related to supply chain. Now, I'm quite sure that many of you have family background in the farming sector, or you will have access to people. You can use that as an area and collect that data. And many of these data sets are actually available on government portals and various other things. And we actually created affordable agriculture labs in 6 engineering colleges in Pune through the initiatives that we have been running. And we do mostly all of these things through IEEE, which is one of the largest professional bodies which is there. And TCS has been a very strong partner to IEEE. And we played a very active role in getting the students to work together. So we would have people with chemical engineering, we would have people with environment engineering, people with civil engineering, people with electronics, people with computer science. We have made it very open to them, and you can join as a team. So when you look at some of these problems, you can actually work in internship mode, not necessarily with just your classmates, but you could also do across disciplines and create certain things. So don't necessarily limit yourself and your thought process only in a track that what was laid down earlier. Create new tracks for yourself. And I would strongly encourage you guys to look at some of these things, because the current focus that is happening in India, you probably are at a very, very opportune moment. The amount of focus on transformation is absolutely phenomenal. Initiatives like the Atmanirbhar Bharat is an absolutely amazing one, where we will do things for ourselves and we will also do things for the world. So we can actually become the food capital, we can become the manufacturing capital of the world, and there is great amount of opportunity for youngsters like you to actually look at, not necessarily limiting to smaller areas, but also look at some of these new areas where you can actually play a role, especially building up things for yourself. And there are areas which you can get into, especially as I said, there are a lot of startups, no need for you to actually wait. In many of these cities and many of these locations, you actually have startup communities which are there. You can register yourself and you can go and attend some of these meetings. Many of them do webinars. In many of these large cities, you have the Chamber of Commerce, and they connect with many of these people. Attend some of these webinars. You will get lot many ideas to solve problems and create your own internships. And I'm sure that your professors and your guides would be supportive of whatever you would do.
That was wonderful. I think you've given, firstly, the example that you spoke of in Pune, the Pollution Control Board. I think through that example, I'm sure the students would know that, like he himself mentioned, there is no way you need to reach out to somebody. Does not have to be a company, but you just need to look around. There's a lot of data around you. So grab the opportunities around you rather than waiting for an opportunity to come to you. I'm sure he gave a lot of examples. He gave a lot of, and I hope you all have made note of that. We'll be having a recording of this posted on our platform as well for you to refer to it later. But I think there were some brilliant data points that he shared, and I hope all of you made note of it. Again, going back to our Ask Me Anything questions that we had, one of them was that if, what kind of advice would you have for somebody who's just starting off, or, going to start off on a career in about a year or two's time? So a fresh engineer, what kind of career advice would you have for him or her?
So one first thing which is there is, I always tell anybody is that learning is not something which just stops after you become an engineer, you complete your engineering. It's continuous learning. So one thing I will always recommend each one of you is that don't stop being a student. Being a student has to be like a long, continuous learning, and you have to be a student for life. So that's one advice I would give you. The second thing I would tell you is that don't necessarily get yourself boxed into thinking based on what people tell you, and be your own self. You have an engineering mindset, you have opportunity to actually reimagine things. I remember the tagline we had created. We actually celebrated 100 years of my institute. I'm from VJTI in Mumbai, and we celebrated 100 years in 1988. And all of us had made T-shirts, and the tagline over there on the T-shirt was "We engineers move the world." And I think, given the current situation that we are in, I believe that each one of you have the opportunity to take that step and making that difference. And specifically with the type of initiatives which are getting launched, I feel that each one of you should keep an eye for things. Just day before yesterday, or maybe yesterday itself, there was a AI and data related directive which NASSCOM rolled out. It was a fantastic document. I will have that put up on the Campus Commune site. It's available. If you just search for NASSCOM and AI and data, you'll find that document. And it's a fantastic collation of what are the opportunities which are there. So you should absolutely read that document. There is also an AI policy that the Indian government had rolled out, and that again is available. So if you look for Niti Aayog and look at tracking all the things that they have over there, there is a bundle of opportunities out there. So my advice to you is that keep an eye for some of these things, and also share it with your students. Just think of it. Many a times I've seen kids do the projects, and there's no use of that project after they are done with their engineering. Why don't you think of solving a problem for your village or for your city or for your locality? If you'll actually feel significantly delighted if you're actually doing that as part of your internship. So why actually go and do things for somebody who may not necessarily take your solution? Instead of that, make something very meaningful out of whatever you can do. And there are, as I gave you examples like these, as I mentioned, there is so much amount of content out there, and I very strongly believe that each one of you have the potential to make a big difference. There's a very interesting book that I have read, written by Dr. Mashelkar and Ravi Pandit. The book is titled "From Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting." And it's a very interesting story. It's about how India using digital, we don't want to just leapfrog and say, okay, we want to go from say 183rd position to maybe 150th or maybe in the top 100 and things like that. Why can't we be in the top 10? And the type of power and the intellect that we have in the students and in the community that we have, in the educated community, I think we have the opportunity to pole vault India itself in a big way. So my advice to you is that be the architect for future of India. I think that is one thing which I would strongly recommend. You can do it right in the student days. You look around, you'll find some problem or the other which can potentially be solved. If you want more details, we had actually come up with a publication called Parivartana. If you search for Parivartana on the TCS site or on Google, you'll find that write-up. We had about 20 odd different stories, which are different problems which are there. And just go on searching. You don't need anybody's help. You can do the search for yourself. And I would suggest that you create those opportunities for yourself. And that's the biggest advice that I could give to you, that in the current scenario, I can tell you I've been in the industry for about 30 years. I have been a very strong advocate for innovation and creativity. If you are creative, if you have the drive for it, the opportunity which is there in front of you will never come again.
That is great advice. And now, since we are on the topic of opportunities in growth and future, do you think it would also be advisable for these students to be part of some bodies or some forums which can, further help their learning as well as, give a push to them on their career front?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially for engineering graduates, one of the things which I feel very strongly is that you need to be very well connected with what's happening in your respective industries. So you could get into an IT industry, or you could get into civil engineering, or you could get into mechanical engineering, manufacturing. But you need to know what else is happening in the world. And I think the best way to do that is through industry bodies. And I was reading some of the best stories from India. You're talking about Make in India and Atmanirbhar India and the impact that is made. And there are 2 or 3 companies out here in Pune, and they have really made us proud. I'm talking about Bajaj Auto, for example, and the type of impact they have made, and the entire auto industry, the motorbikes industry, and the type of impact they have had in the worldwide. And they have picked up some of the brightest of students from various of these institutions. In fact, Rajiv Bajaj, I heard him talk about going to VJTI and some of the top institutes to get the students from there and build up a core team which is constantly innovating. But just take an example of somebody who is there, and if he or she is just locked into understanding what they are doing within, say, a Bajaj Auto, then they will be very limited in their understanding. But if they want to know about what are the advances which are happening, what are the type of mobility demands which are there, how is electric vehicles making a difference and things like that, you need to know about what else is happening. Same is in the case of, you talked about biomedical engineering. How is AI playing a role? How will you get to know about these things? And hence, I strongly advocate the enrollment of students as well as professionals into some professional body. And I'm giving examples from where I have been associated with. I have been very closely associated with IEEE over the years. But folks who are into computer science, ACM is another one. There is Computer Society of India. There is electrical engineering. There are various of these societies and bodies which are there, and you can start doing that right from your college days. And I interact with quite a lot of students. We have student branches in Pune, about 25 of them, and each of the branches have office bearers and former students. The biggest advantage I saw from whatever they were doing, the amount of exposure they had on various activities that the student community branch was doing for IEEE. They get to connect with me directly, for example, or they get connected with various other industry folks. They get a lot more exposure to the what is happening in the industry, and I think that is a very critical aspect. I've been teaching, I've been doing workshops in some of these colleges, and these volunteers, they come up to me and say, "Sir, we want to work with you or do a project," and I provide them with guidance, and those type of exposures are very critical. And in general, most of these industry bodies, one of the things that they do is it's a knowledge repository. There's so much amount of knowledge which is being assimilated from various members. So just look at IEEE itself. It has close to about 420,000 members, and each of the member and are experts in one area or the other, and their contributions, the work that they do and stuff like that plays a very significant role. So, I was mentioning about the work that we are doing with affordable agriculture. If you look up the TCS Global YouTube channel, you'll find a video on sustainability analytics that we have put together. It is based on the work that we have done over there. So getting to understand some of these aspects are very critical. So I would strongly recommend that each one of you look at what is available. Many a times people ask, oh, I'll have to spend 2,000 rupees, or when you become a full member, when you are in a professional setup, I have to spend 5,000 rupees or 7,000 rupees and stuff like that. Annually, that amount is very minimal from a point of view of what benefits that you get. I have been associated with IEEE for the last 30 plus years, and more so because Mr. Kohli, who was the first CEO of TCS, he actually advocated it in a very strong way. And I have got multifold benefits out of IEEE. The connections that I have, I play a very active role at Pune level through the administration and various other setups. And I go there as not only as a TCSer, but also as a member of IEEE Pune section, and that actually helps in a big way. But I feel that these areas are important in current times, especially when things are changing so drastically. It is very important for people to learn from what else is happening elsewhere. And your learning agility is very critical. Things will change, things will evolve. And as I very strongly believe that to make a difference, we will not have to leapfrog, but we'll have to pole vault. In that context, learning from what else is happening globally is very critical for us. So hence, take a look at this as a very integral part of your activity to-do list as a professional.
So I think very clearly what you've said is learning agility will be very critical, and of course big time advice for you all to join and be part of a lot of these industry bodies where you can leverage on the knowledge repository that they have. So definitely to do. Moving on, again, another of our ask me anything question, and she's saying they say data engineering is for old people and freshers should do DevOps. Please cut the clutter for me.
Yeah, actually, it's a very interesting question. The DevOps aspect and the agility aspect, which is there. So we have all moved on from what was the older aspect of running things. DevOps is the way forward, and I'm good that you asked that question. Study agile practices. Look at how quickly we can deliver solutions to businesses. How quickly we are able to solve specific problems. And in the world that we are currently in. It is in seconds that the difference you can make. So it's important the way you actually build solutions, the way you deliver the outcomes is very critical. So in earlier days, we would actually have a request coming in, and there would be people who would actually be processing data and things like that. It is today's world. It is all about self-help. I would want to have an app where I can actually go and get things for myself. And that particular app and the solutions behind it and the data and the algorithms behind it can continuously evolve, and hence that aspect is very critical. And we've been driving this in a big way in our organization. We have reoriented many, and the numbers are astounding. 450,000 employees in TCS. A large number of them have gone through agile-based practices and training around it. We have quite probably one of the largest numbers of agile practitioners. So I would strongly advocate that since you bring it up, ensure that as you learn things, get into the model of working in a DevOps mode.
Moving on to our next question, which is, sir, is it important to learn AI than data science? So his question is more on whether should I go for AI or should I stick to data science?
I would say if you have the choice now, do both. The fundamental and the foundation for anything to do with AI is data. So it is very important for you to understand data in the true form. What is the data? What are the different types of data sets which are available? How does data elements relate to the decision making and stuff like that? So I would strongly recommend that you study both, given the current scenario. And in every walk of life that you get into, maybe you get into doing marketing related work, or you get into core manufacturing, data will play a very critical role. And AI, as I said, we will build solutions which potentially will help things become better for whoever is in the industry. And I think that is very critical to look at. And you may be a consumer of AI, but you can actually look at deciding, saying that, look, I have this type of data, maybe it will be useful for this algorithm to use and stuff like that. So I would strongly recommend, when you look at, don't look at it in isolation. So whenever I go and talk, I talk about data, analytics, and AI all in the same breath. And I think if you really want to make a career in this particular area, then you have to focus across the entire data value chain. And some people might get into doing more technology stuff around managing the data and looking at how best the data can get into the systems and how best you can collect data and things like that. There will be some people who will look at how best to manage and govern that data. Some people might build up competencies around how best to secure that data. And some people might build competencies around how best to use that data and how effectively I can use that for the right decision making. Some people might actually look at how do I ensure that there is no bias into the algorithms which I'm building up and things like that. So I think the spectrum is very wide. So I would say that at your level, first start off with getting a complete understanding of the entire data value chain. If you go by the two data points which I can tell you, there is a report which was published around the top professional opportunity professions which are there, and data science, AI are right up there on the top. The NASSCOM report which came out on data and AI again talks about $500 billion business in the opportunity space for you. So in that sense, you have to look at it in conjunction, and I would strongly recommend you that you focus on that.
So his advice is that you focus on both and you have the opportunity and the resources to take care of both of it. So Again, good advice. We're a little over 4 o'clock, but thank you so much, Dina, for coming and having this chat with us. I'm sure the students learned amazing things from you, from the insights and the perspectives that you've given them. Definitely, I think you, more than anything, a message that I think I can definitely concise is that you don't need to look out for an opportunity, or you don't need to look out for a company or an industry. There are a lot of things happening around you, so you just need to pick out something around you and start off with it, and I'm sure you all will do great.